Here we go. Welcome, everybody. This is our newest casting conversation. And I am Michael Donovan, and this is also Richie Ferris. And Richie and I cast this project. In this case, it's called Stranger Things, The Drive-Into Experience, which was kind of wild, everybody, huh? Kind of unexpected. I think the only live show that was going on in Los Angeles during COVID, which is kind of amazing that it kept going with a whole bunch of actors. We cast like 50 actors. And we are very happy to introduce these lovely people all around us. When I say your name, just give a little wave. Dennis Renard, there he is. Emory Royston, Viva Rose, Sionne Elise, Renard, and Rogelio Douglas III. And here's the kind of cool connection, everybody. Everybody on this page, with the exception of me, went to UCLA. Everybody.
Yeah.
Including Richie. So, and I taught at UCLA for 12 years, and this is where I met all of these lovely, lovely people. And I've had the pleasure of casting them, some in multiple things, and some this was the first time out. So it's great. So let's go around the room and maybe like tell us what role you played. And then maybe tell us a little bit about your background. How about that? So Dennis, why don't you go first?
Sure. So I played a Demogorgon. And, it was my first time doing a role like that, and mostly come from the theater, little TV and film here and there. Originally from the Deep South. But
you survived.
I survived, and I am in the best shape of my life.
Tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, like John, and we've had the pleasure of casting Dennis. I don't know how many times. You tell me how many times.
Quite a few. The first time it was right out of school. I did 12 Angry Men down at Laguna Playhouse. Since then, I did the closest thing to Apollo I've done, actually, or Stranger Things, was the Apollo show that Michael and Richie also cast. It was a first national tour of Apollo 11 at the Rose Bowl. It was a great time, great experience.
Didn't actually tour, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, that happens. We learned a lot.
On it and didn't go. They'd realized that they had to move this enormous sort of building, would you call it, tent thing?
The Lunar Dome.
They had only booked 2 weeks in between each spot to move it, and they realized it took 6 weeks to move it. Oops. So the whole thing went down the tubes, but yeah. So you're looking good, Dennis.
Thank you. Appreciate that. You too. Look at y'all.
I think something that we should include here in our little intros, because I believe you guys know far more than me. I believe we still have a couple weeks running of this. And so some of you are still doing it. Some of you are not. So, let us know if you're still doing the show. And
running through the end of May, right? That's where we are right now. Yeah, I believe so. Sionne, tell us a little about you, what you played and all that stuff.
Hi, yeah, my name is Sionne. I was originally hired as a Robin cover, later becoming a full-on Robin, and ended up doing that for the last 8 months and still doing it. We're going until June 5th, I believe, is official closing. I hope I'm allowed to say that. I said it. So.
Tell us about some other things that you've done.
Yeah, so background is also largely in theater, also do film and television as well. Right out of school, I did a show at the Victory Theater Center called Show Pony. And then I had just booked a Edinburgh Fringe Festival show that was going to go August 2020, and then pandemic. But what's kind of fun about that is that it led to me being in Stranger Things, and I wouldn't have done this show if, the pandemic hadn't happened.
Yeah, we're all dealing with things that did not happen. But there are glimmers, yes, it seems. So we are very hopeful that the future is going to be nice and bright. So cool.
Sionne, is the hair
Emory.
specifically,
Oh,
is
sorry.
the haircut for the show? 'Cause I believe it was longer before
Yes.
casting, right?
I had my hair cut for the show for Robin. This is my Robin hair, but
Hey,
I
Robin.
think I'm gonna stick with it.
It looks
Yeah,
great.
I like it a lot. Yeah.
Thank you.
Emory, tell us about you.
Hey there, my name is Emory. I went to UCLA and got into, while I was studying acting, got really into puppetry. And so puppetry has kind of been like my big passion that I've been keeping myself busy between acting, bookings, and gigs, as one needs to find something to do. Which was great to work for this because I've been wanting to do suit performance for a while to kind of mix the puppetry and the acting together. And so that's something that's been on my agenda, and this was the perfect opportunity for that. Yeah, I joined SAG actually through a puppet gig that I booked in the middle of Stranger Things. So that was actually really exciting. I had a lot of experience in stage, also doing some film and television, and yeah, I'm non-binary. My pronouns are they, them, and so being a Demogorgon was a lot of fun to kind of be a character that didn't have any gendered stereotypes,
So our Demogorgon is non-binary? I just need to know.
Sorry, well, is a Demogorgon non-binary? I think so. I don't think we have a clear-cut answer on how the Demogorgon identifies.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I am not around for the extension, unfortunately. Just a combination of things, including some health things. Make sure your warm-ups and keep in good shape, because all it takes is like one trip and one bad fall, and then you're fighting uphill the entire time. So that, I think, is my biggest takeaway from this experience, is really stay on that.
And Emory,
moving forward, are you pursuing non-binary roles, or?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really fortunate. It's been really great to have those opportunities come up in the last year or so, getting them sent my way, just to be able to, to portray a character that feels closer to how I identify in terms of the mixing of my masculine and feminine traits, and showing all the colors of myself, being able to bring that to a role and not feeling like I have to fit into I'm not sure where my brain was going with that, but it has been wonderful to audition for non-binary roles. Yeah.
Well, this is it's an extraordinary time in the industry, is that this is embraced like it never has been before. It kind of has sort of opened up everything. It's becoming a lot tougher to type people now. It doesn't quite work that way. We don't fit into you'll excuse the pun, little boxes as easily as we once did. So, but I think that's a great thing, actually. So, Ms. Viva, hello, good to see you.
Hi, you too. Hi, Richie.
Hi.
I am Viva. I was cast and am still playing Maxine Mayfield in the show. I am from Northern California and studied acting at UCLA. Got really into the improv and stand-up comedy scene while I was there. So that's sort of what I do also for pleasure, and, other gigs in between auditions and stuff like that. I do a lot of improv and stand-up. And yeah, I would say what I've done, but I booked this one. I graduated, I was the first pandemic class, so it was kind of nothing. We had to move our showcase online, and I went home. And then I was very lucky to be cast in this and get to work during the pandemic, which is crazy, because I think all of us in my year just thought that it was going to be like a few years before we found any sort of footing after graduating during the pandemic. So it was very exciting to get to work on this show with everybody.
Viva,
I'm sorry, Richie. Good.
I have two follow-up questions for Viva, because Viva and I actually hadn't met before this, because usually I get to meet Michael's classes much more, but because everything had switched to virtual and everything changed, I didn't really get that. So this is kind of a new meeting for me. But so question number one is, where in NorCal, as that is also where I am from. And question number two is, with the improv and stand-up, Is that something that you could see being a main focus, or is that kind of like something you'd like to keep doing while pursuing others, or is it like open to everything? Like, where's your head at? Because that's always a fun area to focus on.
Yeah. So I'm from Palo Alto in Northern California. If you know where that, where are you from in NorCal?
A Sacramento area. So
Okay.
and
So
my wife's
not super close. We're like horizontal.
yeah, but my wife's from the Bay, so we spend a lot of time around Sonoma County and everything like that. So definitely
Nice.
spend time in that area as well.
Yeah. And then with the improv and stand-up, yeah, it is definitely something I love to do, and I would love to make it part of my career. But you know, it's a tricky field to get into, and at the same time, I love doing it because I find that doing improv and stand-up consistently has helped a lot with just regular acting. Like I find staying practiced in improv helps me with most of my auditions. So aside from actively pursuing the career itself, I also find it super useful in most domains of this field.
I think stand-up comedy is the ballsiest performance art there is. I always admire stand-up comics. I just think it's crazy.
Yeah, everyone has been talking about like every stand-up comedian like re-entering after a year of not having anybody to practice on. So we all just have all this material that's just going to bomb for like a solid 3 months before we can actually be in front of people.
Well, it's nice to have people to bomb in front of, though,
Yeah.
right? So Rogelio is the only one who I did not meet as an undergrad. Rogelio got his MFA from UCLA. So tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. Rogelio Douglas III, originally from Brooklyn, New York, but I currently now live in LA for about 4 years now. As Michael Donovan said, I got my MFA from UCLA. Also a pandemic grad, class of 2020. And I play Lucas Sinclair. I covered, you know, you'd be surprised how many times I get that question. You know, since the pandemic, since graduating, I've been grateful enough to sort of just, it's actually been an opportunity for me to reach out and meet many other theaters around LA. You know, everyone was just trying to figure out how do we still work? How do we put on some plays? How do we work Zoom and things like that? It also, unfortunately, you know, was a huge rise in injustices and, you know, a lot of political things going on. And so, not that I'm proud of this, but it also opened a lot of different opportunities for me as everyone was trying to tell these stories, these different stories. So I got to work with many, many theaters around LA. You know, like I was working with like a different theater almost every day because I was just working from home. And I guess that was cool. That was pretty awesome. And then I ended up doing, you know, I was cast in this show and it's been 9 months. And, you know, I was thinking about it the other day, but it almost feels like it was another year of school in a way, right? 9 months would be a year of school.
Yeah.
And then I had a summer break and I went back into another 9 months. So it's been awesome. I'm really grateful.
It's a great way to look at it, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So Brandon is next. So Brandon has heard me say this before. Brandon has my favorite self-tape ever. I'm saying a lot, okay? And it was for this show. So
you'll have to let me know when somebody breaks the record, Michael.
I will.
I'll have to come and film something new. No, yeah, I mean, I'm Brandon. I play a Demogorgon in the show. I still play a Demogorgon in the show. And that tape was just such a cool opportunity. I got the audition sides and all it said was tell a story in the style of your character. And it said suit role. And I asked my agent, I'm like, I think they mean the monster. Can you get clarification if they mean the monster? And it was, yes, it was the monster.
No, we weren't allowed to say that in the breakdown. So that was the problem. But everybody figured it out. I mean, come on. So,
right. And so I just looked at the prompt and I said, okay, how would the Demogorgon tell a story? And decided to kind of do a play on what happens a lot in season 3, where all of the flayed turn into these like monsters and like all these weird ticks they find. And yeah, and I just put it on tape, and literally right after I cut, I just started laughing. Like I've never laughed so much right after I taped something. I was like, that was the most ridiculous thing I've ever done. I can't tape it again. I have to just send that in. And it was cool, you know, it was a great experience. And then I got to meet the cast, and, you know, I honestly just think for me, this show allowed me to meet so many people during a time when I like otherwise wouldn't have been able to, and to continue to use my social muscles and see other people in like a safe environment where everyone is tested. That's the biggest blessing of all. I just feel like I've been so grateful to show up and get to do that, you know, to leave my room and go and meet other actors and work with them in a creative way. So that's me. I'm still working on the show, and I still absolutely love it. I love kind of going full out, and it's very athletic, which is unlike a lot of the other roles I've done in the past. A little bit about my background. I grew up in Seattle. I started acting when I was about 5 years old. By the time I graduated high school, I'd done about 50 theatrical productions because I just really liked to do theater. And then I came studied musical theater at UCLA, and just tried to kind of absorb and soak up as much as I could. And then I graduated. And since I graduated, I worked with Michael on International City Theater's production of A Splintered Soul. We all played Polish immigrants to the United States post-Holocaust. And then I worked with 3D theatricals in Secret Garden, where Richie has worked, not on that particular production, but on a few other productions. And yeah, and now actually it's crazy to say, but I didn't do that much film and TV before COVID. I was really trying to kind of break in. And now since COVID, I've done 2 professional feature films. And I've done 2 SAG feature films, and I just booked in the last month 2 co-stars on network television, which I'm really excited for. So yeah, it was really exciting. And in some ways, I think this time sitting and focusing and thinking about what I want, you know, kind of having everything slow down for a while, and sitting in a little bit of that silence really helped me focus in a really good way.
A couple of thoughts of that. I think work begets work, first of all. And I think also just, you know, making sure that you're flexing those creative muscles on a regular basis. It just works. It's like if you put down an instrument for 6 months and you pick it back up, you're like, I don't know how to do this, you know, and then, and it just so I think it's so great that we had something that at least you guys could be working in. Let's talk about, let's start with the audition process and then going into callbacks. I think this would be interesting for people to hear. How was this your first callback on Zoom for most of them?
And just for context, I believe that this audition callback process was July, August. Just to put that out there for anyone who watches this, and for you guys to remember what things were like back in that time, because yeah, this is a pretty crazy idea to be jumping into an audition process at that point.
So we self-taped first, and then the callbacks were with the director live, who was in London when we were doing that, if I'm not mistaken, right? So that's the advantage of this Zoom thing, is that we can reach anywhere and reach a lot of people at the same time. But that's one of the good things about this. So who wants to jump in and talk about the experience of the callback?
I guess I'll jump in. I found this callback to be way more personable than any other callback I've been to, because it wasn't like I was waiting outside with a bunch of people, went into a room with people behind the table. It was me and Matt in 2 squares talking directly to each other. And it felt like in some ways, even though it was through a screen, it was so much closer, and I was able to like actually connect with him on a human to human level, which I don't always find in audition or callback rooms. Or at least it feels like it can be forced or struggled when you're like 6 to 10 feet away behind a table. You know, this feels so much closer. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it.
I thought, you know, Matt is an actor too, and I think he knows how to speak actorese. You know, I think he knows how to really talk to an actor and really connect with you. So I thought that was particularly effective. I'm glad to hear that you found it was easy to accomplish. What about you, Viva? Was this your first Zoom callback?
Yes, it was. I agree. Jumping off of what Emory said, I think I was like a little flustered by the, like, we did the like story again, but in like a different way. And so I was like a little bit off game. But then as we went through, Matt just like dived right into like asking me questions in character. And I was like, okay, yeah, I can do this kind of thing. And I felt like that was like very much in my wheelhouse. And he was like really helping me out to be like, let's just pretend like we're talking. And that was really cool. And also I had like no idea. I don't know that any of us knew like exactly what skill set I would be using in the actual show.
They hadn't decided yet.
Yeah. So I was like, I hope this is useful.
Yeah. Well, that was part of it for us too. We were sort of like, well, what skills are we looking for? You know, so we just kind of figured, well, let's find out what skills we have, and that they could sort of help build the show, actually, to know what skills you had. But the main thing that I think you said, Viva, which is so important in auditions, is that you were able to just be yourself, just be personable, and just connect. And this is, I think, a lot of actors struggle with this, is that, you know, just kind of just be. You know, it's. And so many people feel the need to be on and performing all the time. And it's like, well, we want to get a sense of what it's going to be like to work with you. You know, and I thought that you accomplished that really nicely. Brandon, speaking of repeating, you had to repeat the becoming a Demogorgon.
Yeah,
again.
The crazy self-tape. And that was cool. I mean, I was prepared to do it. And it was also just something I'm always excited to do. And then I think, you know, Matt just then had me pick like moments from it, and his whole concept behind working with me was simplify. And it's something I've kind of observed like in myself, and kind of what you were saying, this need to perform and need to like to really show everything you're doing, and Matt's like, we see everything you're doing now, just you don't need to show us, you know, just let it be there. And that was a really interesting callback experience. And I would also say another thing that I love about Zoom callbacks in terms of letting go and just being yourself and taking the pressure off is A, you're in your own bedroom. It should be kind of the place you're most comfortable. But also you're not in a waiting room with a bunch of other actors. And it really takes your brain out of any sort of competitive mindset or any sort of unnatural pressure besides just your craft and what you've shown up to do. And I think one thing I hope to take away moving forward is just to really stay focused on myself, on what I'm doing, and not really get caught up in who else is in the room and what, you know, what stretches and what warm-ups and what scene running things are they doing that really don't have anything to do with what I'm there to do.
You guys have all heard me say the waiting room is a very dangerous place. It's where you can get really screwed up. You know, you're intimidated by that guy that you know is booking everything in sight, and it's like, oh, they're gonna go with him, right? And meanwhile, they look at that guy and go, he's all over the place. We want somebody new. But you've already given it away because emotionally you're like, oh, I'm not going to book this, you know? Or, you know, people who are nervous keep you busy and talking, and you're like, I need to focus, you know? So I think, Brandon, your point is very well taken, is that in this one-on-one thing, it's very easy to focus, you know, but to hang on to that when we hopefully go back to live auditions again. So, although I do think self-tape for first round is here to stay, guys. I really do. I think theater was the last holdout for the self-tape, but I think, it's here. It just, it is so much easier to kind of get a quick sense of you. And Richie and I have found that we can actually see more people. You know, we're not cramming in, you know, we only have 2 hours to see this category. So, well, how many people can we see? But now we can kind of open that up. So it does create more opportunities. What about you, Rogelio? And what about the technical aspects of doing Zoom auditions? What other, tell us about that too.
Sure. Well, for me, it wasn't my first. I think I had maybe 2 more before that one. And not for theater. And I think that is one thing that was different and new for me. The technical thing in terms of like just, okay, so my thought process of when I first, you know, I got the call back was I kind of put it in a way, I matched it with being in person. So the waiting room did exist for me in Zoom, and it drove me nuts. Kind of just being on the other end, waiting for someone to pull me in. And then they pulled me in, you know, and there's like, there are 8 or 9 boxes with no faces. And then it's just this one person that's talking to me. And sometimes you might hear some other voices from other boxes. and it was a little weird. It felt like, you know, having a table with many other producers and executives on the other side. As was just said, though, I think Matt did a great job in kind of just being like, hey, like, you know, like we're just chilling. Let's, you know, how can you be big? How can you be small? All right, what can you do without words? I was like, all right, this is new, but it's fun. One of the things that I did learn from doing these Zoom callbacks is that I should probably try to have space, no matter, you know, like I just don't know what to expect. You know, and Matt was like, move. I was like, great, I need space to move. But yeah, other than that, you know, the one thing that I am really working on, I think I've gotten better at entering the Zoom callback, trying to do something and be myself during the callback. The thing that I'm working on is after the callback. When they kick me out and I have to click end meeting, because I'm already home, like there's nowhere for me to go to sort of take my mind off of it. And so now I'm just replaying everything.
Oh man.
And so that's the one thing I'm working on. I usually find myself doing a deep clean of my house.
I totally agree with that, Rogelio. The energy, like going from an audition, the car ride back home, like you can diffuse all that energy. But when you're already home, I just found myself with all this like adrenaline. I was like, what do I do with this?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah.
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 Very interesting. There's two things. The waiting room thing. I've always said hell for me would be put me in a room and tell me I'm next. Because that waiting thing is much worse than actually the doing thing. I don't know about you guys, but like when I was an actor, like in the being in the wings right before the show would start, I'd be a nervous wreck. As soon as the show started, I'm fine. But that waiting, you know, so I get it, you know, so that it's very important. And the other thing too about maybe the advantage of self-tapes is that you get to look at it again, unlike a live audition, in which you're like, I don't know how it went. And you're, you know, like you said, Emory, in the car on the way home, you're going over it and over it in your mind. It's like the self-tape, you can look at it, you know, and go, okay, that sucked. I can redo that, you know? So, so make sure you look at your self-tapes. It's really important, you guys. Sometimes we're like appalled at what people have sent in. I mean, it's a little shocking. So
Michael, do you feel like now that most people can self-tape versus when you were in the room, do you feel like most auditions are stronger because that advantage that people have?
That's a good question. I think I'm still adjusting. I would say I love the sense that I get of somebody when they walk into the room. I'm, you know, and by the way, you know, decisions are being made as you walk into the room. Dennis and Rogelio both intern for us, so they've watched a bunch of auditions, and you just immediately know something about the person. I do miss that. I don't know. What do you think, Richie?
Well, an interesting thing is you can get, as if you have time to spend on this, you can do as many takes as you need to get it perfect for your vision of it, or, you know, as close to perfect as possible. It's like, great, finally that's the take that gets what I want. But what we miss is the ability for the casting team, the director, to impart our vision of it onto you. So all we get in that tape is how you view this thing, but it could be completely not what we want. And, you know, obviously, you know, we can see potential, we can see the attempt or whatever, but yeah, that's what we miss from an in-person audition, is the ability to work with you to see what we can get out of you, even if you come in with something great, but that is not what we need. So, you know, yeah, you can spend hours and it's like, yes, that's what I wanted to do, but, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's what we wanted you to do.
And the redirect is something that, you know, we don't get to do, which is, you know, a little bit unfortunate. It also, the advantage you guys have, like, if I may talk about like a dance audition, is like, you know, when I was a musical theater performer, I could dance, but it took me forever to learn it. So now I'm gonna watch it until, you know, 8,000 times until I got it, you know, but it's like, so you don't see that I'm struggling to learn. And that's something that we also learn about you in the audition process. So what about you, Sionne? Is this your first Zoom callback?
This was, so it's interesting. This was actually my second Zoom callback because I had been in a Zoom production of The Imaginary Invalid playing Toinette. And I didn't tell you this before, Michael or Richie, but that show was on the Sunday. We were doing that show the Sunday, and then rehearsals for Stranger Things started on Monday.
Wow.
And I had everything set up in my home because I'd gone home to Northern California. So I had a whole setup and I was all ready for my callback because I had this whole setup for this other show. And so it was actually kind of nice to already feel like I had been in a more theatrical sort of rehearsal space, that I was very ready for a callback that was in the same vein. Except then when I actually got the role, I drove down that night right after my show on that Sunday night. And I never told you that.
Yeah.
But I did want to say a really interesting part of this audition process was that I had researched the company and saw that they were an immersive theater company. And I was like, how do we do immersive theater through a screen like this? When I know that it's going to be in person, but how do I show that I can be an immersive performer? And a lot of that came with Matt, like Viva said, like talking to you, asking questions in character, having a conversation, because that sort of seemed like the most immersive way that we could do that. And I thought that was really fun.
I have one suggestion for the self-tape before I forget. I think if you're auditioning for film and television, kind of the shot that I am is about right. What I would suggest if you're doing for theater, open it up a little bit, just so that you can have a little more space to move, you know what I mean? And not that it becomes hugely, you know, ridiculously demonstrative or whatever, but at least it gives you a little bit more space. And I think, Rogelio, you touched on that a little bit too. So Dennis, let's talk about Dennis. Dennis, you were a later ad. For those of you who know the show, it is white, with the exception of one role, which is what Rogelio played. So there wasn't much opportunity for color except for the Demogorgon. Could be non-binary, could be pretty much anything. So, and that's where Dennis ended up coming in. So I want to talk a little bit about your coming into the project.
Yeah, so Michael asked me to send in a tape, and it was the same prompt. And I was unsure of how to do it, of course, because it's like, you know, Demogorgons, they don't talk. I know that much. So yes. I kind of, so I'd done motion capture training in the past. So I kind of just borrowed some of the exercises we did. I was like, let me just show them that I can, you know, I can be creative, I can play. And then boom, I was like thrown into the mix, and I was like, wait, what is the show actually going to be? I was so confused for a while because everything was so up in the air and everything was still being developed. But Matt was so sensitive to the fact that I had never done a suit role before. And he was very much like, I got you. I know you might be confused, but I'm your guy. And I really appreciate that.
Cool. So guys, let's talk about the experience of doing the show. I mean, some of you touched on it a little bit already. I mean, how was it? Who wants to go first?
I'll take it away. I think the Steve and Robin portion of the show is really interesting because we don't actually get to speak. We are doing all of our lines to a pre-recorded scene. So what was interesting was going into it, you think that maybe there's not a lot of, I don't know, wiggle room in terms of your acting and what you can really do, because you have to hit these certain points and you have to make sure you say the line, or at least physicalize the line as they come. But what we found doing the show is that there's so much that each Robin or Steve or Demogorgon even can bring to their own personality as that character, even just physically, even though we all have the same lines with the same voice. And so we each have our own little things that we would bring to it. Like one of my bits, for example, was whenever Robin doesn't have something to say, I can just like write little notes like Steve sucks on a car if it's dirty. And little, like, you find things, and doing a show for so long, like 7 to 9 months, you find things different every single show and every single week. And it's actually really fun to keep discovering new stuff that you didn't think you'd ever discover.
So important. Is this the first time for all of you doing a show of this length, this many months? Yeah, because obviously, you get a tour or whatever, you could be in the same show for years. A Broadway show could be for years. It's possible, and keeping it fresh, keeping it new, discovering, not just phoning it in. I remember years ago, I went to see a Vegas show, and I was an actor at the time, and I was so excited. I'm seeing a Vegas show, and they marked the whole thing, and I was like, wow. First of all, you should all have been fired, but just like, it's got to be the first time every time, right? You got to find that discovery every single time. So,
well, especially because not only were we doing it for months, it was 12 to 16 loops a night. And so it's within every single night, you have to keep, like, you're halfway through, 10 pulses in, you still have to keep it as fresh as pulse one. And that was hard. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And without the audience reaction, because they're all in their cars. So as laughter or shrieking or whatever that would kind of inspire you to keep going, you have to find that on your own, right?
I think Sione saw me reacting to her a lot. We had an exchange through the windshield.
Yes, I made sure to find Richie.
It's true. It's also worth mentioning that, I mean, obviously, such a crazy time, but I feel like you guys are so lucky because, as things open up, especially with theater, and it slowly starts to come back, people are going to be, brushing off so much dust, and you guys have been stretching these muscles for the better part of the year. So, you'll come back and you'll be like, yeah, I kind of still been doing this. So let's jump right back in.
Brandon is a perfect example of that. He's booking things already, which is awesome. So
yeah, and it's just so inspiring to just be around your fellow actors. And that's one thing I think I've learned, particularly this year, is just how important those connections are, because I learned so much and inspired so much by people. Sometimes I'll be talking about, oh, I'm worried about sending this email, reaching out to somebody, and then my actor friend will be like, well, just send it. And then, like, we can always be that voice for each other. But, I think back to the experience of doing the show, I think one of the things that the Demogorgon taught me that has really taken my acting, because when I first stepped into the Demogorgon, I was excited to do it, but I wasn't sure. My focus is film and TV. Here, I'm wearing a mask. I'm obviously not speaking. So, like, what am I going? What translates? And I think there's a few things, but I think one of the things is having a performance that's solely physical, because I'd never really been a dancer. And the Demogorgon doesn't have to dance. The Demogorgon can really be kind of inspired and organic every time. I really learned to let go and to stop any sense of watching myself or directing myself. The Demogorgon is such an athletic kind of track. It's just like one intense minute of slashing and monstering and, like the Jurassic Park sort of vibe that every time I'm in it, I just let myself be in it. And then when I'm done, I can step back and say, okay, how was that? But I think it really helped me work on that sort of performance anxiety that was like always monitoring myself. Now I don't do that anymore. I just enjoy the experience of being inside of the thing, whatever vehicle I'm sort of riding.
Yeah.
Awesome. Rogelio, how was it for you? You also played so much younger than you are. Was that challenging, fun?
A couple things. First thing was that I almost said no to this. As the actor, you just never know, like, what the process is happening, after you audition. And I was auditioning for other things, and I had conflicts that were coming up. And I actually didn't think that I was, going to get offered the role. So I started taking other things. And then I was in one position. There was one day where I had to choose either that production or this production. And I can say today that I am 110% confident and proud that I chose this production. Playing younger, I thought was difficult. The show evolved so much, let's just say. The first couple of days, there were moments of not having a mask on. So there was something. We did have to speak. Windows were down, so we did have to make, on my floor, so we did have to make these conversations and these connections with an audience. I think playing younger got easier as time went on, because I had to learn how to do more. Like, what are the ways to communicate with just your body? I think that's actually one of the great things that I learned from UCLA. What are the little minute things that you can do with every part of your body, every instrument, how you communicate with that. I love how I'm a fan of therapy. And, as I've mentioned to some people as well, I hopefully at some point want my PhD in drama therapy. And as more and more as we did the show, got to see how much of a moment of therapy my performance was for a child or for an adult, especially during this time, them having to, whether it's after work or, they finally got a Saturday off and they grabbed the whole family. And it was just so impactful to see how excited an audience member or a family can get. And both, like, they can get really, really happy and laugh a lot. And you're like, what are you laughing at? I know you don't understand what I'm saying. Why is it so funny? And then you have others who are like in full tears and so excited because they are so immersed into whatever. I don't know if it's the character or the show or just being outside and sort of being
outside, yeah.
family. Being outside, Mr. Clark would say something like that. He was like, how many people are happy that you are outside today, right? And that's huge, and I have the honor of safely being outside and being a part of that experience for everyone, 5 times a week, now twice a week. But it's still all, as I think Brandon just said, making it new every time. That last pulse should deserve the same performance you gave during that first and second pulse.
I think what you just said is spot on. There's no small part of this experience that, this was something live, something to do. When you're talking about, as Brandon said, you're in your bedroom, you're in, this is your whole world is right here, just to get out and to see things and the response to the show was enormous. It sold out, almost immediately. And, during COVID and all these times, and yet they figured out a way to get around it. And going back to what you talked about, Sionne, before about the immersive thing, they had this whole thing planned. I don't know whether you guys know that. And then when COVID hit, they thought they were going to have to pull the whole thing back, and then they found a way to do it. So to have been a part of creating this extraordinary thing, I'm very proud to be a part of this. And I thought you guys all were just terrific. And 50 actors or whatever it was, it's just nuts that this whole was able to come together. So
at any point in this long run, did you guys ever have to shut down, cancel shows? Because I know, we were in months there where we're like the epicenter. They're like, you step outside, you're putting yourself in danger. It got really scary there, like November into February, something like that. But you guys, did you ever stop?
So the only thing that happened was the curfew. So there was a curfew at 10 p.m. in LA. So we had to make sure that the show was done at 10 p.m. So it was just odd because everything was moved up. And so we started, when did we start? Around like 4, I think?
Our call time was like 1 p.m. though.
Yeah.
And everyone was like,
Yeah. But then that was
amazing.
lifted and we went back to nighttime.
I think there was also one windy day where
I was about to say that, yeah.
some of the tarps fell down for like the walls, and we had to delay like the first half of the day. I think
It rained a couple times. It rained. That made it a little more difficult.
Yes.
I will say our COVID compliance team, they were on it. They were amazing. They kept us in line. They kept the fear of God in us. And I think that's why we never closed.
That's a testament to every single person involved, really.
It's one of the reasons why Richie and I agreed to do the show, because that was our major concern. I said, I don't want to do anything where the actors are going to be in danger, so they assured us up and down, backwards and forwards that, this was going to be very safe for you guys. So that's one of the reasons we agreed to it. And then also the audience was completely safe. It's like, stay in your car.
It presented an interesting wrinkle as our first kind of big project back was, we're used to, there's all kinds of reasons someone can pass on a project, not be available for a project, money, conflicts, whatever, family stuff. But this one I was like, well, we have to consider that we could have a good chunk of people that we want to bring in who just based on COVID alone are like, I can't do this right now, which of course we completely understand. Yep. So it brought up so many different ways to even think about casting and who we can pull from.
And on the rehearsal side with the COVID compliance, it really changed. I mean, I'm sure the other cast members can attest to this. Like, so much of the ensemble building that happens in theater, like, is by being next to your castmates and like having these exercises and these games to play. And we couldn't have any of that. Like, we could barely even sing happy birthday to each other if it was someone's birthday, So like that causes.
Yeah, that was firm no.
Yeah, they were no.
So it wasn't until I saw the show, driving through and watching the show, where I was like, oh my gosh, this is what everyone is doing and how it comes together, because it was such a segmented rehearsal process where like, I didn't see any of the Starcourt kids do their thing until I drove through it. And like, that was really, I think, a bizarre and unique experience of the COVID rehearsal process.
I never thought about it. Did you all get to see the whole show?
Eventually.
I saw it in previews, so I think it's changed a bit. But yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. All right. So what's next? So since this is winding down and some of you have already left, what's next? Rogelio, what's next?
Yeah, great. Okay. Great. As I was saying earlier, it's so funny. These 9 months felt like another year of school. I've been trying to plan what is the next step, right? And the summer's coming up, things are opening. Am I planning for the next year? UCLA kind of helped me like quarter out my yearly career life. And so, I mean, as of right now, I've just been booking a lot of commercials, to be honest. And it's been helpful because it works both with this schedule and it's still helping me pay my bills.
Wonderful.
But thank you. And yeah, I know I have a couple of theater I'm probably going to work with Shakespeare by the Sea this summer again. And that's it. I'm really trying to dive into the TV and film. And so
the theaters are, we're obviously in touch with most of the theaters, starting to open up, starting to announce all that kind of stuff. So I honestly believe that we're going to see a real renaissance for theater, you guys. I think that we are very tired of looking at our screens. We're very tired of these boxes, and I think to actually, you've had the experience for 9 months of looking in each other's eyes. Most people haven't gotten that experience, and we just want to see a real body, a real person, and to get that connection, that feeling. So I really think we're going to see a huge renaissance for theater. So, and I hope you guys will all be a part of that. Viva, what's next for you? Oh, sorry, Emory, go ahead, jump in.
I just had a quick question. Speaking of the renaissance of theater, I was wondering if you had any thoughts about the whole LA Stage Alliance leaving LASA and what the future of the LA theater scene is going to be. Because there's so many conversations about how we rebuild in a more equitable and favorable way after that.
Well, that's what we have to do, is rebuild in a more equitable and favorable way, and kind of, I mean, without saying too much, I think that they were just woefully behind the times, and some of the things became a little embarrassing, and there are a lot of stories that we could talk about. I think it was time for it to go. Unfortunately, well, it replaces it. Will the ovation still exist? Who's going to step in and do that? And there have been a number of people talking about doing it, but it's an enormous amount of work to try to do that for very little money. And right now, most theater professionals have really taken a huge hit in the last year. So it's not like, we're all deep pocketed anyway. So to volunteer to start something up right now for no money, I don't know. So I honestly don't know where we're headed, but I think those of us who've always pushed for diversity and inclusion will be insisting that it be done differently. How's that? Okay, fair? Okay. Viva, you want to jump in about what's next for you? No? Love that.
Yeah, who knows?
Are you back in LA?
Am I in LA?
Of course you're in LA. Never mind, stupid question.
No, I've been performing in the show from my computer, just like. Yes,
I didn't know. I honestly don't know which of you are still in the show, truthfully. So
sorry. Yes, I am still in the show. And actually, I was going to say, when me and Sionne showed up to set on first day, she was like, I just drove here from Oakland. And I was like, I just drove here from Palo Alto. She was like, oh, did you go back home? I was like, yeah, me too.
Yep.
Anyway, but yeah, I'm in LA now. I don't know, been doing this show for 9 months. I managed to find some form of representation after the whole pandemic showcase situation. So that's cool. Mainly just working with them. I'm like building up stuff and auditioning classes, that kind of thing. But I don't know.
I forget which ones of you are in the same class. Is anybody in the same class? I've lost track of.
Brandon and I.
Brandon and Sionne are the same year. Everybody else is different years, right?
Ro and I are the same year, but he was MFA and I was undergrad.
There you go.
No one
Emory,
else is class of 2011. Come on, you guys.
We're playing kids, Richie.
Emory, what's up for you next?
That's a great question, because I think I am the only one here who is not currently still in the show. But I don't think I have a specific...
Not in anymore either.
Oh, Dennis. Okay, gotcha. I was unaware. I am currently submitting proposals for some puppetry projects, some different venues, some theatrical venues. I just submitted a film proposal, didn't get it, but like that kind of grind of getting proposals together and submitting them. The real thing is that I need to get a reel together, and that's something that's been on my list for a while, but especially a reel that like encompasses who I am and how I want to portray myself now, because the film that I have is me from my time at UCLA, which is, now at this point, wow, like over 5 years ago. So that's where I feel like I've kind of been in this spot for a while of trying to just get that happening so that my manager has more stuff to actually pitch me on. And so, yeah, I just moved. I am finally feeling like I'm settled and getting my stuff situated. So I'm hoping that in the coming months, I will have that project more together, and I'll have some more stuff to pitch to people. But that's where I'm at, is figuring that out.
For those of you who don't know, Emory's funny. He's really funny, and I want to see him embrace more of that. So I don't think you embrace that enough. Dennis, what's up for you next?
We will see. I mean, during the pandemic, I got new reps, and there's lots of tapes, lots of callbacks and things. So we will see. We will see.
Yeah, we will.
Cool. Who did I miss? Who did I not ask yet?
Brandon, I think.
Brandon and Sionne. Okay, Brandon, go ahead. I know you talked a little bit about what you're doing, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm excited. One of those features is going to release in November, and that'll be like my first feature that I can watch somewhere, either streaming or in person. I'm excited
Will you
for
still
that.
talk to us? Will you still talk to us after the feature is released? I just want to.
I'm considering it. I'm making a list right now, and it's kind of a Venn diagram
Oh
of
my God,
people
so
also
stressed.
No, of course. So I'm looking forward to that, but also right now I'm working at my pizza restaurant. We're just starting to reopen, and I just got promoted to server, which is very exciting for me. So exciting and and scary, but so I'm looking forward to that. And then the other thing that I'm kind of looking forward to, especially the summer, is, and now that I can meet with people again safely, is I want to start board game nights. I want like a once a week board game group, and I'm gonna
Dr. Emory and I, we both play.
Exactly.
Yeah, I got to reach out to you guys then and just see what's going on. 'Cause I love
Totally.
it. So
Yeah.
so that's everything for me.
Good. And Ms. Sionne.
Yeah. Let's see. What's next? I did hear from my Edinburgh play, so hopefully they're coming back. They just were seeing about schedules, so I hope that was a good sign. And then I've actually gotten very interested in film producing, so I've been taking a few more PA gigs.
Right.
So I've been on set trying to learn as much as possible, and see if I can sort of, you know, be a filmmaker as well as an actor.
Well, we know a brilliant casting team should you need that at some point.
I don't.
Yeah, who? Sorry.
Guys, this is really fun. Great to chat with all of you guys. Thank you for being here and participating. Thanks for doing an awesome job in the show. And stay safe, stay healthy. And Richie, go ahead.
So this is like a one-word answer, but it's a fun way to end it.
Okay.
Here's the question. Here's the prompt, and you can answer one of three things. So the question is, what was your fandom of Stranger Things before this audition, before you booked it? Were you either a super fan, a casual fan, or never saw it?
Never saw it.
Never saw it.
Never saw it. Wow.
Super fan.
Super fan.
Casual to super fan.
Okay.
Somewhere in there.
Never saw it.
I had to
Super
watch all 3 seasons in a day before my
That's what I did. I binge watched the.
My follow-up was going to be, had anyone never seen it? So the fact that 2 of you had never seen it, not counting Michael, blows my mind. That's so cool. Wow. Well, good on you getting up to speed like that.
It's a lot of information at once.
Yeah.
All right, guys, stay in touch. There's a lot of work ahead. I'm convinced of it, and hope to see you all in audition rooms soon. Okay. All the best, everybody. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the run for those of you doing it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.